Now, from the studios of 106.7 My Talker Radio, the man, the legend, the one who just drives you crazy, Curtis Wright, on the beat.
Hour number 2 already. This Monday morning's going quickly. Grab something hot. We've got lots more to talk about. 7:05 across southeastern North Carolina. Going to be a beautiful day. It's going to be warm again, so watch yourselves out there. And keep it tuned here on the new 106.7 FM My Talker Radio. Again, you're on the beat. I'm Curtis Wright. We know that small businesses, particularly new ones, contribute significantly to our economic growth. As state leaders, it's important to understand how our policies are impacting entrepreneurs and make sure that we have the most accurate, up-to-date information available on what's working and what is not. The difficult thing is no one's been able to pick out those winners beforehand. It's important that we have a wide pool of new firms that create new companies every year, and that's more likely to get fast-growing companies over time. Also mentioning in the article, and this is from Jennifer Ginn from the Capital Ideas newsletter, reminding us that the vast amount of new jobs are created by those small companies that are created each and every year, and we need to keep that all going. And to make that all happen, we need infrastructure, capital infrastructure, and that's why today, again with us, continuing our discussion about just that, how to create that infrastructure, is Thomas Voss, and this is Cape Fear Capital Connections. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good to be with you. I appreciate that. And I wanted to begin by connecting to something that you had said in your earlier session when you were talking about all the unemployed college graduates. 1 out of 2 are unemployed. In addition to the unemployment problem, the capital gap problem that we're trying to address addresses another problem in North Carolina that you can see on Facebook. The presentation is we've had a severe decline in family income in North Carolina over a 10-year period of time, and that's caused by a lack of capital investment, especially in North Carolina small companies. If we had had the level of investment that we needed over the last 10 years, our incomes in North Carolina wouldn't be going down.
Well, explain that. You're saying, I'm assuming, and explain this a little bit further, is that if the capital had been there, then more successful companies would have grown and expanded in the economy. Thus, the economy would have expanded. Thus, there would be a more opportunity for better pay. Is it that simple?
Precisely the case, and the issue there is that the investments in technology companies and manufacturing companies in North Carolina create high-wage jobs. Our median state family income dropped from around $47,000 10 years ago to $41,000. So our families in North Carolina are going backwards. The investments that we need are in high-wage jobs. We need high-wage permanent jobs, and you only get that if you make capital investments in North Carolina technology and manufacturing companies.
You know, we've strayed so far from the understanding of what I call the free market, how business works in a free market, or let's say has worked in a free market, that even concepts of something very simple. If there's more of a burden on a business owner, cost-wise, if there's unnecessary costs, if there is if there's some question about what my taxes will be or what my costs as far as taxes and fees and regulations, then entrepreneurs, companies, hold back money and thus suppress or depress income, right? Because they just have to. They have to have that money available or at least that option available to try to survive. And there's, for some reason, we just don't understand that in America. It's a very simple idea. We just don't understand it anymore.
What's going on is the level of uncertainty about the future creates uncertainty in the minds of the business owners and the investors. Both of them. Business owners who need capital and investors who would like to invest are uncertain about the future. And the free enterprise system does not work well when there's uncertainty about the future, because everybody requires the promise to repay, the promise to be capital gains, profits in the future, depends on a certain level of confidence in the future. And we don't have that in America right now.
The capital availability, I would assume, and we're seeing. Let's jump to North Carolina here. We are now seeing a turnaround, if you will. We are seeing something. Actually, we're leading the country. More information came out on Thursday and Friday that we're now seeing more employment. We're seeing companies that are starting to look at expanding. We're starting to see all these positive effects. Will that on its own? And of course, I think that a lot of that is more certainty in lower regulation, lower cost of doing business, things like that. Do you believe that that will start now to spur this conversation about let's start now working on private sector capital infrastructure, availability of capital?
No, not really, because that's the status quo, what you're talking about. We've got a gap, and the part of the gap is that as a result of NAFTA and foreign trade policies that were detrimental to North Carolina, devastating to North Carolina, we lost 400,000 jobs in North Carolina in 10 years. We lost 400,000 jobs, pretty much high-wage jobs, jobs that paid about $45,000 a year. And those jobs were never replaced. What's going on, what you see in North Carolina is a replacement of some of those jobs with much lower service sector jobs, retail jobs, wholesale trade, that kind of thing, that don't pay very high wages, at, $10 an hour, $15 an hour. And those jobs are not going to ever create the kind of wealth that we need in North Carolina. We've got a gap, and the gap needs to be overcome by creating a new type of capital market infrastructure that allows capital to find companies to invest in North Carolina.
Well, that's where we really need to start to expand our discussion. How does that work, though? In today's economy in America, my concern that I have is that because of the cost of government, the federal government, the state government, the local government, which we've kind of accepted. A lot of elected officials, you hear from them, well, that's just the way it is. If we can't get the cost of government down, which means more money in everybody's pocket, the business owners, and more capital available out there, then how do we overcome this? If we can't cut back this bureaucracy, how do we ever get on this path that you're talking about?
Well, to put that in economic terms, what you're talking about is investments and savings. The economists have an idea that the level of investment and savings, investment capital and savings, has to be at a certain level. And if the government continues to take capital out of the private sector, then the level of investment and savings is lower. The government doesn't. The government doesn't do anything with its capital. It just destroys capital. And so we need a certain level of capital investment every single year, and we need that in certain types of industrial sectors in North Carolina. I'm just looking here at this graphic. In the 7 counties of Cape Fear, the regional economy of Cape Fear that goes all the way up to Cumberland, we lost hundreds of thousands of jobs in the Cape Fear regional economy. Those jobs were high-wage jobs, and there's not the level of investment and savings that we need in the Cape Fear regional economy to overcome that. And that's because government, regulations and everything, all the uncertainty, has prohibited the level of investment that we need.
And I know that, and of course, the Republican mantra, the call to vote them in for the majority, and then of course the supermajority the second time around, was just about that. We're going to lower the burdens as far as we can. In fact, they would like to completely eliminate individual and corporate taxes, because of a belief that if we create this robust economy, actually government will end up having more money, because ultimately, with a robust economy, revenues go up, tax revenues. But if we keep everything down and get these burdens off them, the companies now can start to, grow. They can start to expand. They can start to hire people. I'm just not sure. I have to tell you honestly, I'm not sure we're ready as a society. You see the protests to really cut this government back dramatically. To be able to get the spark going, the necessary spark to start the level of what we need. I want to talk about that. And two is I'm not sure we're still believers, even though what we have seen happen, there's still people that believe, I should say, that government is productive and creates something.
It's not. It's just not.
I know. We know that.
It doesn't create anything.
But I think we've got 50% of the people in North Carolina that still believe that.
Yeah.
That you can't fire government workers because what are they going to do? Instead of saying, yes, we can cut them back, these people will find better jobs in the private sector.
Well, and it distorts the price mechanisms. It distorts competition. It distorts everything. It's an awful way to run your economy.
Stay with us. We're going to come right back with Thomas Voss. We're going to continue to talk about creating capital infrastructure here in North Carolina. I'm Curtis Wright. You're on the beat. This is Cape Fear Capital Connections.
Curtis Wright.
I think he has done a fine job.
On the beat.
Under very difficult circumstances.
The new 106.7 My Talker Radio.
We're back live here on the beat. This is Cape Fear Capital Connections with Thomas Voss. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook. Please post it there. Is the outline of the discussion points today, a PowerPoint presentation, and the one from last week. You can download it yourself, print it off, share it with your friends. Also follow us on podcasts, which are being posted on our live stream channel. That's new.livestream.com/WMYT 1067 FM, Cape Fear Capital Connections. All those links are on the Facebook page as well and on our website, WMYT1067FM.com. Before we went to the break, I'm just, I sort of rattled on about something, but here's the issue. Here's the issue is, can we rededicate ourselves? Can we recommit ourselves in America, a majority of people and a majority of elected officials, to the free market once again? That's how I see it. Now, in South Carolina, there's a lot of things that have come into play to bring about the South Carolina Small Business Capital Investment Act, and you were part of that. But that's a mindset. See, they have a mindset. It's kind of like we're seeing from Texas. Not kind of. We are seeing it from Texas. That all these different components, all these different areas of society and politics, are all on the same page. And I'm wondering, in North Carolina, can we get everybody on the same page to the extent to be able to pass something like this? So first, why don't you tell us about what took place in South Carolina with this Small Business Capital Investment Act?
Well, and let me go back to the philosophy of South Carolina, and a little bit different than North Carolina. It's very interesting to think about the differences between our two states. In South Carolina, it's not just an adherence or an allegiance to free market. It's a very deep devotion to individual freedom, individualism. Mm-hmm. And that's different than collectivism. And so North Carolina, what we've got, in my opinion, is about 50% of our population, or maybe 47%, somewhere in there, that's more like socialism, and they're not committed to individualism. So you've got to tie individual rights, individual freedoms to private enterprise, to the free market, to allowing the free market to work. And that means letting individuals achieve their success and their prosperity. That's what you've got different in South Carolina than we don't have in North Carolina. The Small Business Investment Act, Capital Investment Act in South Carolina, took a new part of the federal law and exempted the citizens of South Carolina to allow them to invest in South Carolina companies. So they exempted themselves from federal regulations, which is exactly what they needed to do. And then in addition, and I know
and that's been upheld.
That they are just moving forward with that legislation. Good. You know that you and I both are very much opposed to industrial recruitment incentives. Mm-hmm. And tax dollars are given to these corporations, and it just doesn't work. It's totally a bad idea. But down in South Carolina, what they did was they took that same notion of tax incentives for making an investment in a South Carolina company, and they provided an incentive, a tax benefit to the investors, and then the company itself gets a tax credit, and then on the capital gain, on the profits, you get a capital gain benefit also. So
but everybody does.
That's right. All South Carolina
basically the
residents.
market is picking winners and choosers, not some bureaucrat in some office.
Precisely what they did in South Carolina, which is to allow the capital market system to work and then to provide incentives for that system to work in South Carolina. And that's a lot better idea than trying to have people in Raleigh pick and choose what's going to win or what might lose. I mean, most of them lose. That you allow capital markets to work. And that's what we were trying to do down in South Carolina. We need to do that same kind of thing in North Carolina. We need to, actually, this is odd. We need to follow what the leaders in South Carolina are doing because they're way ahead of North Carolina in this case.
And one of the things, and I've talked about this on the show before, that I supported the governor, of course, spearheaded, and she was she did a great job at articulating their position. And that was that if we're going to do something, then we're going to do something like improving infrastructure, roadways, availability to water, sewer, services, things like that, making sure fire and first responders are in place. And again, that benefits everybody. It benefits, and then the free market can do it. That's the role that I've often talked about, that government should be taking at the table. What can we do to support economic growth and expansion? Not we're driving the bus, you know?
And the philosophy that you were talking about earlier, where Obama was talking about the millionaires are getting a tax break, and that kind of class warfare just doesn't work. We want people to be as prosperous and as wealthy as they possibly can be. That's the philosophy we need to be pushing. But this class warfare just doesn't work, and especially in capital markets. You've got to let investors make the investment. Now, a lot of them might lose. It's true. It's very risky. On the other hand, when people make money, when they make profits, they reinvest those profits in North Carolina companies, and those profits recreate jobs all the way down the road in the future. And that's what we've got to get back to.
And there's another part, and I know that Tom Goolsbee spoke about this a number of times. Senator Goolsbee spoke about this. Is looking into is also that can transcend generations. We have this situation that I'm not quite sure through Senator Goolsbee whether anybody's really addressed it, and that is we have a lot of, because of the way tax policies work on the state and federal level, we have a lot of people that just don't. They move out of the state so that they can close out their business, and instead of passing it on and passing it on, so it's passed on to the next generation, and then it picks up from that point and expands, and that's what we need, because that's long-term economic permanent expansion and stability.
And that goes to a philosophical, political problem we've got in Raleigh right now. In the capital markets, there are venture capitalists and angels who are looking for a quick return, a fast return. And what we want to do is invest in established North Carolina companies, manufacturers and technology companies. So it's not just the quick hit. It's not just, make some money and then run. It's stay here in North Carolina, invest in North Carolina, and the second and third generation be here in North Carolina and create jobs. We've got to have a capital market system that invests in a company that's 7 years old, that's 14 years old, that's 20 years old, and they don't need much capital, but the capital market infrastructure doesn't exist. And that's why this piece of legislation in Raleigh called the North Carolina Small Business Investment Capital Act is so important, because it targets North Carolina established operational companies, and it gives them the opportunity to raise capital from North Carolina residents. What I'd like to see in North Carolina is that exemption for the state, but I'd like to see the regional capital markets work. I'd like for the Cape Fear regional economy to have its own capital market infrastructure. For the 7 counties, the citizens in the 7 counties of Cape Fear could target companies in the Cape Fear and invest in those companies. That's what we've got to get to.
And you and I have talked about this off mic, and this article, actually, I brought up, it was part of this article, and that is, it creates, and I know the word that was used, and maybe it's now dated, synergy, but it creates this activity amongst entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs within that region. Back and forth, which is something that, it can spark new businesses, new enterprises, expansion. in the free market.
Exactly right. Those are called inter-industry effects, employment and income multipliers. It's a supply chain effect. We've got to get to that. We've got to strengthen our regional economy, and the only way that we're ever going to have prosperity is to have very strong companies in the Cape Fear buying and selling from each other.
Don't forget to follow our new segment here, Cape Fear Capital Connections with Thomas Voss. Don't forget to follow that on Facebook. Please like the page. You can download his notes for each one of these segments. You can also go to our live stream virtual channel. Cape Fear Capital Connections has its own channel. So you can watch all of these podcasts that we're doing there for you. And I hope you'll tune in next week. I hope we'll also be getting to crowdfunding. And what does that mean? What's that all about? And the explanation. And folks, again, thank you for following us. We'll be right back here on The Beat. Representative Chris Millis is next.